October 2nd, 2023, San Francisco. A woman is hit by a car and thrown into the street. A driverless taxi spots her, runs her over, and then, because its sensors don't register a human being underneath it, pulls over to the curb. It drags her 20 feet. She survived. What happened next is the part the company tried to make sure you'd never find out about. Because Cruise, the self-driving startup that GM spent over $10 billion turning into the future of transportation, did not come forward. They did not correct the record. They filed a report with federal investigators that described the crash and left out the dragging entirely. They had the video. They shared the video. They just somehow forgot to mention what was in it. The Department of Justice called that a false statement submitted to obstruct a federal investigation. Cruise called it an oversight. This is the story of how the most expensive bet in the history of American self-driving cars ended not with a breakthrough, but with a cover-up, and why it probably couldn't have ended any other way. To understand that, we need to go back to where it started. Kyle Vogt built his first self-driving car at 14 years old. Not a science fair project, not a school assignment. He took a Power Wheels toy car, stripped it down, and wired it up with sensors until it could navigate on its own. In Kansas City, in the 90s, before self-driving was a category anyone had heard of. He went to MIT, studied computer science and electrical engineering, competed in the DARPA Grand Challenge, the government's open competition to build autonomous vehicles, while still a student. Then he did what a certain kind of MIT dropout does. He started companies, Justin.tv SocialCam, and then in 2011 a little live streaming platform called Twitch. Amazon bought Twitch in 2014 for $970 million. Kyle Vogt was 30 years old and had already changed the internet once. So when he founded Cruise Automation in 2013, a self-driving car startup out of Y Combinator, nobody laughed. The resume was real. The obsession was lifelong, and the problem he was trying to solve was genuinely one of the hardest problems in technology. Teach a machine to navigate a world built for humans, at speed, in the rain, in traffic, with lives on the line. In March 2016, General Motors bought Cruise for roughly $1 billion. GM was watching Tesla. GM was watching Google. GM was watching every major automaker in the world scramble toward the same cliff edge, and they decided that buying the most credible self-driving startup in the country was cheaper than building one from scratch. Vogt stayed on as CEO. The mission stayed the same, and for a long while, it looked like he might actually pull it off. By 2018, the money started arriving in amounts that are hard to say out loud without pausing. SoftBank's Vision Fund, the same fund that bet billions on WeWork and called it a tech company, wired $2.25 billion into Cruise. Honda followed with $750 million, plus a commitment to invest another billion over the next 12 years. Walmart got in. Microsoft got in. By January 2021, a fresh $2 billion round pushed Cruise's valuation to $30 billion. $30 billion. For a subsidiary of General Motors that had never turned a profit and had no cars commercially on the road. And GM, for its part, leaned all the way in. They projected that Cruise would generate $50 billion in annual revenue by the end of the decade. Not a hope, not a stretch goal. An official projection delivered to investors with a straight face. From the outside, it wasn't completely insane, because Cruise was actually building something. Real engineers, real cars, real test miles on real San Francisco streets. And in June 2022, they did something no company had ever done before. They received California's first driverless deployment permit, the first commercial robotaxi service in a major American city, operating without a safety driver, charging real fares to real passengers. We all watched the videos, a Chevy Bolt rolling through the Mission District at midnight, no one behind the wheel, picking up strangers and dropping them off. It looked exactly like the future was supposed to look. Total raised $15.1 billion. Peak valuation $30 billion. GM's decade-long bet finally paying off. The only thing nobody was asking, not the investors, not the regulators, not the press, was what happens when the car gets it wrong. The cars started misbehaving almost immediately, not dramatically, not in ways that made headlines at first, just strangely. A Cruise robotaxi would stop in the middle of an intersection and sit there, hazards on, refusing to move. Another would pull over to the curb for no apparent reason and block a lane for 20 minutes. Riders reported being stranded mid-trip when the car decided it couldn't continue and simply stopped. Then came the fire trucks. In April 2023, a Cruise vehicle blocked a San Francisco fire truck responding to an emergency. It wasn't the first time, it was just the time someone filmed it. The San Francisco Fire Department eventually filed a formal complaint, documenting at least 66 incidents where autonomous vehicles, most of them Cruise, had impeded emergency response. 66. Cruise's response was measured. They were learning. This is what early deployment looks like. The technology improves with data, and data requires miles, and miles require cars on the road. They weren't wrong exactly. But the city was becoming a testing ground for a product that wasn't ready. And the residents of San Francisco were the unpaid beta testers. Here's the part that still makes no sense. In August 2023, California regulators approved Cruise and Waymo for unlimited round-the-clock robotaxi service across the entire state. Full expansion, green light. This was weeks after the fire department complaints, weeks after the intersection stalls. The vote wasn't even close. Within days of that approval, Cruise flooded San Francisco with cars. And within weeks, the thing everyone had been quietly worried about finally happened. October 2nd, 2023. A human driver struck a woman in San Francisco and threw her into the road. A Cruise robotaxi hit her at 18.6 miles per hour. The car ran over her. Its sensors registered an obstacle underneath the vehicle but didn't identify it as a person. So the car did exactly what its software told it to do after a collision. It found a safe place to pull over. It dragged her 20 feet. She survived with life-threatening injuries and later settled with GM for somewhere between $8 and $12 million. What happened in the days that followed is where this story stops being about a car accident and becomes something else entirely. Cruise filed a report with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The report described the collision. It did not mention the dragging. They had shared the video with the NHTSA the same day. The full video? The one that showed exactly what happened, but the written report left it out. They submitted a follow-up report 10 days later. Still no correction. The Department of Justice charged Cruise with submitting false documents to obstruct a federal investigation. Cruise admitted it. The criminal fine was $500,000. For context, that is 0.005% of their peak valuation. California suspended Cruise's permits within weeks. Cruise pulled every car off the road nationwide. In November 2023, Kyle Vogt resigned as CEO. His co-founder Dan Can resigned the same week. The company that had taken 8 years and $15 billion to build had, in the span of 1 month, lost its permits, its founder, and any remaining claim to public trust. GM spent all of 2024 trying to figure out if Cruise was salvageable. They launched internal investigations. They replaced leadership. They quietly halted expansion plans and began the slow process of deciding whether to restructure, sell, or simply walk away from the most expensive bet in the company's history. In December 2024, they walked away. GM announced it was shutting Cruise down entirely. No more robotaxi program. No more autonomous vehicle subsidiary. The remaining technology would be folded into consumer driver assistance features, the kind that comes standard in a new Chevy Silverado. 8 years, $10 billion in operating losses, less than $500 million in total revenue ever generated, and a $500,000 fine for lying to the federal government about dragging a woman across the street. That's the final number that stays with you. Not the 10 billion, the 500,000. That's what Cruise decided the truth was worth. Here's the thing about Cruise. The accident didn't kill it. Accidents happen in testing. Everyone knew that going in. What killed a $30 billion company was the decision, made by someone in a conference room, to file a report that left out the part where their car dragged a person. They chose the story over the truth, and in the end, they lost both. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe. There's more.